Hello everybody, this is Jack Dennis and welcome to our fly fishing and tying channel. I hope you're all having a good start to the new year and out tying a lot of flies. We started a couple of weeks ago with our Jack Dennis and Friends fly tying session. Our first one was with Dave Allison, and I'm going to be showing you some from the past. One of the things I've been involved with my fly tying career is setting up fly tying theaters and been involved with the many conclaves that fly fishing groups and clubs have over the country. And they really highlight tyers that you may not have ever met. And one of the best ones is one in Idaho, both the Western Idaho Expo and the Eastern Idaho Expo, which is in Idaho Falls. They've been doing these fly tying get-togethers for a long time. We're talking over 30 years. So I want to do some highlights from some that I filmed in 2009 and 2010. And you'll get a chance to meet some names you know, and maybe some names you didn't know. And one of the nice things about tying at these expos is all the excitement and sounds of people going around telling lots and lots of fly fishing stories. Most of them may be exaggerated. But one of the nice things about the theater is you get a chance to listen to the tyers talk about their experiences and answer questions. I think you're going to enjoy them. We're going to start this week with several. We'll try to give you the most information. And I know some of you are going to say, wow, you know, I don't know about the materials. Well, these are really uncut. So, you know, you do your best on figuring it out. But I think you're going to enjoy the interaction with the crowd and with the tyers. And really uncut and I think extremely fun. Let's get going.
Gary always tied this fly on a 1X, and when we were filming his flies, we asked him why he tied it on a 1X long, because there's so many materials it was hard to get them all on. And his answer was, when I developed the fly, that was all I had. So we said, gee, Gary, can we start tying this on a 2X? And he said, sure, you're the tyers, you know what to do. So that was kind of the way Gary worked. He was the inventor, and he would always say, well, you guys know what to do. Show me how you want to tie it. So I'm going to use a 2X. I do not normally tie this fly on this large a hook, but I'm going to tie it on a larger hook today so that you can see it a little better. So it makes it a little more difficult, but it makes it easier for you. I'm going to start out with white because this fly has a white tippet on it. And once you know, I've lost my thread here. And so I'm going to just use the thread as the tippet. Okay. What happened to my... Al, would you come here a minute? I've lost my threader. I don't know what happened to it. But if you just grab my little thing down there with my tools in it, it should be that little thing right there. That right there. Thank you. All right. Sorry for the delay. I lost my threader.
You got one?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that'll do. Thank you. Okay, we'll start again with some white thread. I'm going to start tying this about at the halfway point. I'm going to put on my base wrap here. Oh, I think, you know, he readjusted my vise. I didn't realize that. Can we, yeah, Jack put it up way high, and there, I need it down just a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to start my base wrap right at the middle. One of the things about doing a base wrap is when you get down here to the tip, instead of rocking around the tip, you can just raise your elbow and it causes your thread to go in at an angle. And so you can tie it on a lot faster and do a pretty good job without breaking your thread. This fly has a brown Antron tail on it. Gary liked to use Antron because it reflects the light different than other materials and attracts fish. He tied a lot of flies using poly, and then he would try the Antron, and he said that the results were significant. I tend to use it, like to fly with Antron in low light conditions or kind of muddy water. Whereas if I'm on a spring creek on a real sunny day, I tend not to do that. I'll go more with the naturals because I think you can almost scare the fish a little bit if you have too much refraction. So, but I want this tail to be about 1/2 the length of the shank. So I'll just do a quick measure and tie it on. One thing about Antron is easy to work with. Goes on quickly. We'll just trim it off. Make sure we've got it all up here on top. Now this thread is going to be my tag also, so I'm counter spinning the thread so that I can get it really flat and kind of use it almost like a floss. So I'll get down here and I'm going to put some real smooth wraps on for my tag. The next thing that goes on this fly is the first wing, and the pattern calls for brown, let's see if I can get this, brown hair. Normally I would use a dyed brown, but this is a pretty good color, so I just decided to go ahead and use the natural brown elk for this first wing. One of the things that you want to be sure when you're dealing with hair, a lot of people tend to do two things that cause them problems. Number one, they use too much hair. And number two, they try to use all of this stuff down here because they think they're being economical. This stuff down here doesn't work good. So you need to take hold of the hair clear down at the tip and run your finger through it and get all that other stuff out. The other thing is the proportion of hair. How much hair do you use? If you take the hair and twist it like this, let me get my scissors out of the way, at that twist over point, the hair should be, the diameter of that twist over point should be equal to the diameter of the eye of the hook. And that's for the tail. If I were doing, or for a single wing. If I'm doing a divided wing, I want twice that much. So each of the divided wings would be equal to the tail. The next thing I want to do is stack this. It's interesting because I don't think fish care if you stack the hair or not, but shop owners and tyers like that to be nice and neat and tidy. I see a lot of people taking their stacker and trying to put the hair in tips first, and you kind of have to mess around with it and try to get it in. It's really much easier to take the hair and see how nice the butt ends are together, and open up your stacker and put it in butt ends first. Whoops, I dropped it. Wouldn't you know it? Sometimes when you demonstrate and try to show it in the camera, it gets a little awkward. But I want you to be able to see this. So we'll try it again. Put the butt ends in first. And then just hit it with the palm of your hand. And it's much easier. That didn't look real easy, but it really is easier. I always take a look at my hair to make sure that I can get rid of all of these broken tips, bent tips. There again, I think the shop owners and the fly fishers care more than the fish, but we've got a nice amount of good tips there. There's one more bad tip. There we go. Tying on hair is an interesting thing, and I've had a lot of people today talk to me about the difficulty they've had with hair. And the problem is that in addition to using too much and using the hair that you should throw away, it's the technique of how you tie it on. Now this is wing and tail material, but it will flare. And so if I put it on and really ratchet it down, it'll flare. And I don't want my tail flared. So what I do is I call this my anchor wrap. This is going to anchor this to the hook. So I don't care if the butt ends flare, that's fine with me. But I don't want this to flare. So now I'm doing what I call holding wraps. And those are much looser wraps. And see, that's not flared too bad now. And trim that off. What I want to do next now is change thread. We often change thread as we're tying, and I'm going to go to brown. And this brown is going to be, boy, it almost looks like gold or something on the camera. This is going to be the body material also. So I'm going to keep this flat. Now I could take, and on this size of fly, it might not be a bad idea, but I could take the Antron and wrap it too and make my body out of it. But I'm just going to use the thread. I kind of like the more slender body that this is going to give me, rather than piling up a bunch of Antron. I always check the other side to make sure that I haven't covered up my tag, and that's a good thing to do, to make sure that you haven't got the hair down over the edge. However, if it were a problem and the hair had dropped down and covered up my tag in the body, what I could do is take this. This is called the tie-off point here, and see there's a little bump there, so it'll hold the thread. I can take this tail and pull it up. Probably be best if I use my bodkin. Separate those two materials as best I can. Doesn't matter if you miss a couple of hairs. Bring it under the wing and pull like that, and that'll keep that from covering up the rest of your fly. Now this one, you really didn't need it, but that's what I would do. Okay, let's cover this up now. The next thing this fly needs is some hackle, palmered over this part of it. As you notice, I've got the hackle just so it comes below the hook, and that's exactly how I want it. You need to have enough bare material so that you're not going to be catching the fibers when you tie it on. If you notice, I've got, let's see if I can get this in here. I've got a few extra fibers here because this is going to go right against the shank. So I'll tie it in. And then we're going to palmer it, leaving spaces between, just like you would on a woolly bugger. Tie it off. And trim off the excess. I'm going to pull those fibers back and make them lay where I want them to. Now I'm going to finish my base wrap. And the reason I didn't do the whole base wrap first is because I wanted to identify the point where I wanted this hackle to stop. So it just gave me a visual of, okay, that's as far as you want to go. So now I can finish my base wrap with this brown thread. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is put on calf tail. And I think calf hair is one of the most difficult hairs there are to work with. Lots of times Al and I will use body hair instead of tail because the body hair tends to be straighter, but it's also shorter. So when you're tying a fly this large, you're going to have to go with the calf tail. And the selection, when you go to the shop, is very, very important. You want this hair to be as straight as possible. I mean, this has got some little crinkles in it, but it's pretty straight. You'll see a calf tail sometimes when the hair actually be like ringlets in it, and you just can't straighten it out. The other thing is you want to be sure it's nice and clean and soft. So sometimes if I get some that's kind of, I don't like the feel of it, I'll wash it with Drift or Woolite or something like that, a real nice gentle detergent to kind of soften it up. You can even use some hair conditioner on it if you want, and it just makes it easier to work with. Calf tail notoriously has lots of under hair and stuff in it too. It's almost like my Labrador in the winter. It's got all this stuff in there, and you definitely want to get rid of that. So as you take a look at this piece of hair, if you look at the tip of it, you can see there's not that much there. Look at how much stuff is there, and that stuff you don't want. So you want about down to here. Let me see, where am I? You want it about down to here. So that's where I'm going to put my thumb, and then there again I'm going to work my finger through that and work it out. You can use a comb if you wish. Also, in this dry climate that we live in, sometimes it gets real staticky, and so it's hard to stack it, and I like to use Static Guard. You can get these little cans of Static Guard and spray them on the hair, spray them on your hand, spray them on the stacker, and it really, really helps to keep it from sticking to you, and it helps it slip and stack better. The other thing too is you have bounce pads, and if you want you can put a bounce pad on your lap and kind of rub your hands over it or the hair, and it really is helpful. It gets rid of that static electricity. Here again I'm going to put the butts in first and then stack it. I want this wing to be about the length to go out to where my other wing was. I'm going to let this one slip over to the side and show you how I can fix it. First, let's cut off the excess. Let's talk a little bit about cutting hair off. If I just go in there and go whack like that, I'm going to have kind of a cliff. you know, a sharp edge, and it's hard to cover that up. If you come in from the side and have the hair at about a 45-degree angle, like this, you can kind of bevel those ends, and it makes it a lot easier to tie over it. So that's how I'm going to cut this off. This is really tough calf tail too. All day I've been kind of having to chop on it. Now notice that I intentionally let this go down over the edge, and that's not the way I want it. I want it up. I can twist it, and that'll help a little bit, but it still's not the way I want it. So in order to fix that, I'm going to do what I did on the other wing. I'm going to come over here to this point. I'm going to separate the hair. See if I can just do it with my hand. Yeah. Pull it up, grab my bobbin, bring it around, and pull back to that point. And see how that brings that up? When you're working with squirrel, I find squirrel real squirrely to work with. Squirrel tail seems to really slip down over the edge, and so I always do this. Or you can take a wrap around the material first and then put it on the hook, but that's a little more difficult to do, so I most often do this because this is quicker for me to do. Okay, now we need to finish off. We'll finish off with a grizzly. I wonder if this one is bigger. I just grabbed a couple and didn't really, yeah, that's better. There again, I'm going to pull off some fibers so I've got some bare stem. If I wanted this to stand up, I could tie behind it, but I find it's kind of awkward and I really don't need to do that. So I just tie it in and then I wrap over the end of it, and that seems to hold it pretty good. Now, I'm going to leave a space here. See that space that I left? I didn't get it tight, and you look at it and you say, oh, that doesn't look good. Well, you can just go back over and fill that in. So you can crisscross it across itself if you need to fill in. And I really don't use hackle pliers much until I get down to the end. I mean, with these long saddle hackles, it really doesn't seem to be necessary. When tying off a fly, a lot of people will take 4 or 5 wraps over the end of that butt. Then you cut it off and you got it sticking out and you got to try to cover it up. And you end up with kind of a bulky head. You kind of mess that fly up at the end. The way we like to tie our flies off is just to take, let me get this so you can see it. 1 wrap over it. And now I'm going to push it back. Let's see if you can see this. And I'm going to tie back over it. Several wraps back over it. And see how that pushed that hackle back? Now if I trim that button, I don't even have to worry about making it real short. It's pushed back into itself so you don't see it. It keeps you from getting a really bulky head, and in addition, you've got a Z in there, so it's not going to pull out. It makes a really good sturdy wrap. I got some calcitrant fibers there. Now, when you do your whip finish, it's very, very important that you start your whip finish up tight against the hackle or whatever your last material was, rather than out here by the eye, and come forward. Because if you don't, and I don't know that I can really demonstrate this good, but if I were down here, I would end up with thread on top of the wraps. And that's why your whip finish will come loose. But if I start right here and do my whip finish, I'm not going to have any thread laying across. As you can see, I'm going right over the top. Whoops, you can't see when I'm leaning forward. Right over the top of that thread. And that's a very, very good whip finish. Whoa. I did it too good. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Let's do one more and dress that up a little bit. And there's your double wing.